So we're seeing a trend with Donald Trump right now that a lot of people are finding very confusing. And I'm not just talking about people who are opposed to Trump. I'm also talking about ardent Trump supporters and pretty much everybody in between. Where Donald Trump is now on a very consistent basis implementing paradigm-shifting foreign policies that have a massive impact that he then reverses within a very short period of time, before those foreign policies have even had the time to achieve their stated goals and the stated desires that brought about the policies in the first place. I describe this as sort of whiplash policy, where things just change so quickly that people cannot even keep up with them. And this whiplash policy is causing some very interesting trends, where America is accumulating the baggage of these decisions without getting the positives that the decisions were supposed to bring in return. And what I mean by that is, as these policies are implemented and then reversed, pieces of the negative outcomes remain, but the positive things aren't achieved. And it is progressively making the United States weaker with every single decision. And the latest iteration of that has, in my view, permanently weakened the position of the United States when it comes to global trade. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. The specific foreign policy I'm talking about right now is obviously the recent whiplash approach to tariffs, which in recent days has created some unprecedented trends. Where just yesterday, we were looking at one of the largest single-day stock market crashes in U.S. history as a result of the market reacting to Donald Trump putting tariffs on literally almost every country on Earth, which was then followed by this morning's decision for Donald Trump to remove those tariffs, or rather to pause them for a period of 3 months. Although they weren't totally paused, they were just reduced to a level of 10% rather than the reciprocal tariffs that Trump was going to announce. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but it bears saying at the forefront that neither of these things are good. It is obviously not good when the stock market has record-breaking single-day crashes, but it is also equally not good when it then bounces back with single-day record-breaking gains. Because what this signals is a massive amount of volatility in the stock market, and a market that is open to manipulation, and therefore a market that is not dependable for the kind of institutional, long-term strategic thinking investors that make up a huge percentage of the capital in the stock market. Put bluntly, what we're seeing right now is somewhat unprecedented in U.S. history, where a single person, a president, shows that they have the power or the ability to manipulate the market in one way or another based on their own personal whims. The United States, of course, was designed with checks and balances, and the power to implement things like tariffs that can create these effects is power that is supposed to rest in the hands of Congress, not just a single person, not just the president, but because of various loopholes, Congress has basically given that power to the president, and now the president is enacting tariffs or taking tariffs back on his own whim. Now, just on its surface, this is a problem because there is not enough consistency for any investors to take advantage of either the benefits of free trade or the benefits of a tariff economy, small as they might be. People can't invest heavily in free trade strategies because they don't know if the president is going to implement a tariff policy tomorrow that is going to destroy their business model. But equally, people cannot start investing in infrastructure in the United States to start taking advantage of the protections that are offered by tariffs, even though, in my opinion, those are pretty small. But even then, they can't invest to take advantage of the benefits of tariffs if they can't even count on the tariffs still being in place next week. What that does is it forces the economy into a state of stagnation and panic and inaction where nobody knows what to do next. But that also means that the mere reversal of a tariff policy cannot undo its negative effects. And this has not been adequately recognized by the US stock market. If you look at a stock price graph, what you will see is a massive crash that is then made up by a massive recovery that basically equals out the crash, which of course, from a rational standpoint, makes no sense at all. Because if the crash was caused by tariffs, because people were uncertain about the economic future that tariffs brought, the crash cannot equalize back to where it was before because the tariffs have not been completely reversed. A 10% tariff was left on almost every country on Earth, and even the tariffs on China were not removed, but they were instead ramped up now to an excessively high number, currently sitting at 104%. And so what we see is people in the United States irrationally thinking that because Trump has changed his mind, that everything is going to be fine and dandy and back to normal. And that's obviously not the case. But that's not the case for more reasons than just what I've stated here. It's also not the case because people are completely underestimating the psychological impact that these whiplash policies are having on the rest of the world and their willingness to trade with us. When it comes to the current Trump approach to foreign policy of just implementing massive changes and then quickly reversing them if they don't seem to be working the way that we thought they would work, we actually have well-documented evidence at this point, several different types of evidence of how just reversing the policy doesn't reverse the effects. The first comes when we look at Canada and Mexico and Trump's first false start tariff attempt. Obviously, when it comes to Mexico and Canada, when Trump first came into office, he immediately announced that he was going to be putting tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and then very quickly reversed that decision, or at least paused that decision, and didn't put the tariffs right away like he said he was going to. That reversal, though, did not improve Canadian sentiment towards American markets. In fact, even though the tariffs were not in place, the negative impacts to the US economy started immediately. And that was because Canadians felt attacked, and they immediately started a Made in Canada movement, or at least a we're not going to buy anything made in the United States movement, where very quickly, at the first sign of distrust, they started decoupling their economy from the United States as quickly as they could and started looking for partners wherever they could. Now, the process of decoupling the economy is not immediate. It takes time to make all of the changes necessary. But the psychology that causes people to want to decouple the economy is durable, and Canada is one example. Another example of this isn't with tariffs, but it's actually with Trump's decision to pause military aid to Ukraine, which he then resumed within just about a week, making the decision seem basically pointless because it didn't achieve whatever the stated goal or outcome was. But the negative effects of that decision were durable. When it came to the arms trade, I have a whole video on this. As soon as the rest of the world saw that they could not trust the United States as a military partner because they were willing to pull the rug out at any time, even though the US had reversed its decision, trust had been broken, and a lot of contracts for the US arms industry were canceled. And I've actually received emails from CEOs of American tech companies that focus on selling tech to the military who have told me that they have in fact lost most of their market overnight and are probably going to have to shutter their doors because this one moment in time decision caused people to lose trust in the United States and immediately look for trading partners elsewhere. Now, just like Canada's economy, decoupling your military from purchasing American weapons is not an overnight process, but the psychology that leads the process to start is not quickly reversed. And what we see in both of these cases is that just because the decision is changed, again, the outcomes don't get changed. And I know I'm repeating that over and over because when you forget every other detail in this video, I want you to remember that point weeks from now. Just because you reverse a bad policy decision doesn't mean that the bad outcomes get automatically reversed. Now, notably, in both of these examples that I've shared, the reason that we see for the negative effects being durable is because the trust has been broken. In one case, we see the trust broken on a governmental level, where governments will officially seek different types of contracts to supply their militaries. On the other hand, in one, we see that the trust is broken at a personal level in the minds of individuals, with individuals living within Canada, or for example, in Europe or Australia or anywhere else, just not wanting to purchase from the United States anymore because they feel attacked. And this makes complete sense. I mean, if you just think about it from a common sense standpoint, if you have somebody that you have a good relationship with, and all of a sudden they just wake up one day and you're hanging out like you normally do, and they just punch you in the face out of nowhere. All it takes is one punch. Even if they stop punching you, even if they never punch you again, the trust that you had with that person is going to be broken, perhaps permanently, but even if it's not broken permanently, it's going to be broken for a very long time. And the nature of your relationship is going to change. Trust is built over a lifetime, but it's lost in a moment. And when somebody punches you in the face for no reason, you are well within your rights to start looking for a different friend group. And that's sort of what we see on a global scale. And now that this new tariff push has been made, where it's not just limited to Canada or Mexico or China, but every country in the world has essentially been threatened and punched in the face by the United States, that trust is broken, and we can't really blame the world for looking for other alternatives. Now, in all of this, we see the inherent danger in approaching political deal-making the same way you would approach business deal-making, because there's a massive difference between negotiating a business deal, or like a real estate deal in Trump's case, between that and negotiating a deal with an entire nation. When you're negotiating a business deal and you want to flex your walk-away power and you want to show how tough you are and how much you don't care about the other person, you can, in a sense, do that because you never have to deal with that person again. And it's also an isolated incident, and it's an isolated person or an isolated set of people who are all playing the same game as you. They all know that you're in this deal. They're trying to get the best they can. You're trying to get the best you can. And so if you go to loggerheads while you're negotiating that deal and people get hurt in the process, both of you are kind of thinking, well, that's just fair. That's how business is done. The problem with that, though, on a political standpoint, is that when you are negotiating deals with national leaders, their opinions and the people playing the game aren't the only people that matter. There are actually individuals within those nations who make independent choices that are independent of their government policy. And people, individuals, when they feel wronged, they can make whatever decisions they want, even if government policy pokes and prods them in a different direction. So, for example, individual people, if they feel slighted by the United States, they don't have to purchase US-made products. And you can see examples of this by just looking in the comments of this video, because I'm sure there will be hundreds of comments of people saying, I was going to buy an American-made car, but now I'm going to buy a different car just because I don't want my money going to the United States. Now, this can be hard to track with data, or actually it's not hard to track with data, because all you have to do is look at how many Teslas have been sold in Europe since the presidential election and compare that to the number of Teslas that were being sold in Europe before the presidential election. What you will see is that independent decision makers will make decisions that rational economic theory doesn't say they should make. Rational economic theory says if I reverse a tariff policy, well, the impacts of the tariff policy should be reversed with it. But real human psychology tells you that when you slight people, they will make decisions that in some ways are not in their best interest. People who, for all other reasons, might have preferred to purchase an American product or an American service now might not do so, even though they want to, because they don't want to do business with somebody who they feel has betrayed them. Now, instead of recognizing these basic realities, the American approach to foreign politics lately has been treating the real world almost as if it is a video game, as if you can just pull levers to kind of see what happens and see what they do. And if it doesn't work out, you can just reverse your decisions, or, and the video game analogy, you can just load your last save and things will go back to normal. But in real life, you can't just load your last save. Every action has consequences, and you really need to think about those consequences, and you need to listen to the experts who are warning you about those consequences instead of ignoring them and just pulling the lever to see what it does anyways. Yes, in the political world, this means that change can take a very long time, especially if it is done well. And I'm sorry for touching my face. There's mosquitoes all over me. But in the political world, it can take a long time to enact change, and that's not a bad thing. It is a good thing to not just take action when you don't understand the consequences of that action. It is a good thing to slow down and think through what is going to happen, all the things you might not anticipate before just pulling levers, because as we can see here, just pulling levers, it doesn't work. So as we can see, now even if tariffs are permanently pulled, and they're probably not, they're probably going to come back, but even if now at this point tariffs are permanently pulled and they never come back except for the 10% level they're currently at, the US will already have lost a significant chunk of the European market, which is a $20 trillion market. And the US will also have lost a significant portion of the Chinese market, which is another $20 trillion market. And a lot of Americans will say, well, who cares? We'll just trade internally with each other. And you can do that to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, having a larger global market for your products is always better. And most companies, when they build products, they are relying on international markets to make the profits that they need to keep their people employed. As the United States loses portions of these markets, and therefore companies in the United States lose profits, that is also going to shrink the size of the US market. Because when employers lose profits, they have to cut employees, or they have to not offer as high of salaries. And then the people within that market don't have as much money that they can go out and spend on whatever they want. And on it goes down the cycle. So what we see now is America has permanently, or at least for the foreseeable future, lost the global trade position that they had and that they did not have to get rid of, but already the effects are already too late. And with that global trade position, we're not just shrinking our international markets, but in the long term, we are probably shrinking our domestic market as well, because that's how economics works in a globalized world. So now what we see in all of this is that the United States is getting the cost, the negatives of the tariffs, without even getting any of the supposed benefits of tariffs. Now, I'm not advocating to keep tariffs. I actually am happy that tariffs are removed, but tariffs being removed is a step. It's not a solution to the problems that we've caused for ourselves. And what we're seeing is we're getting the costs, we're losing our markets, people don't trust us anymore, but we're not even getting the benefits that we were sold. We're not going to get the benefits of increased jobs. We're not going to get the benefits of tax revenues on goods that are tariffed, because those tariffs aren't ever there consistently enough for those things to be taken advantage of. And what we see is what happens when you go into foreign policy without a plan. When you don't have a plan, you get all of the costs, you get none of the benefits. Now, by the way, this should probably frustrate everybody, even those who voted for Trump. And actually, in some ways, those who voted for Trump should be the most frustrated of all. Because if you're a person who really believes in Trump's tariffs, and you really believe that they are going to do good for the United States, and that's part of the reason you voted for Donald Trump, you should ask why he doesn't have the strength to pursue that policy consistently. If tariffs really are supposed to protect the US economy, if tariffs really are supposed to create this manufacturing boom that's going to bring so many jobs and so much prosperity back to the United States, why is Trump unable or unwilling to push through the downturns to get the better outcome that he always talks about and he says he's so convinced is really there? If you really believe in that, why can't you pursue it consistently? And what you really see is that Trump doesn't have the strength of a wise warrior. Trump has strength like the strength of a bully. The kind of strength that is very willing to push people around and act and look tough, but not the kind of strength that is able to stand their ground when other people start pushing back. Instead, he just quickly reverses his policies and he tries to frame it as a win. Now, speaking of not having the strength to stand your ground, I am getting absolutely eaten by mosquitoes right now, which I was not expecting considering that I am in the middle of a desert. So I'm going to close this video and head to the car. But before I do that, just a quick shout out. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, but also you can support the channel in a couple of different ways. Buy me a coffee or Patreon. There's links in the description. Super grateful for all of the support. I don't put anything behind paywalls. It's just a way for people to support the channel if they want to. I appreciate it all, guys, and I look forward to making the next video. So I'll see you on the next one.